We'll just kind of start with passing the mic from left to right, going around, talk a little bit. Most people know everything about it. Say a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll go to question and answer. All right, well, I know that Jim's not here, Perkins, or Mr. Hendrick, but they are on their way. I've been told they just arrived at the airport and should be here shortly. So, anyway, let's start at this end with Mr. Killebrew. Just, talk about a little bit your history and be short and sweet.
Yeah, I retired 22 and a half years ago from Black. I hired in St. Louis plant in 63 and retired in 93. But I've seen the Corvette change quite a few over the years. Everybody says, well, what's the best year Corvette? I said, we made it yet. They're undoubtedly they're so advanced now. What I work on, my son just got a 2001. And he wanted me to tell him everything about it. I said, good luck. I don't know nothing about that car. I don't. I mean, the technology is too much. I see C4s. But I had to start out my Corvette school, and I get a few calls every week, but not too many C4s in the school. But my hobby now is making birdhouses. I'm making giveaway to kids. And since 2010, I've made 7,610 and never bought a board, never sold a birdhouse. So I got a lot of happy kids out there. That's it.
Yes, I'd give you a little bit of my background. I was born and raised on a small farm in Thumble, Michigan. If you went on the map and try to find it, you'd never find it. The closest town was about 7.5 miles from my dad's farm, and all they had was a barn, a grain elevator, and a post office fire department combination. So I really didn't have a lot of expectations about career when I was growing up. I went to a one-room country school, a mile and a half from the farm. Walked there obviously back and forth every day. And I was only one in my grade from the 3rd grade through the 8th grade. So I was valedictorian every year for about 4 years. It really didn't know that much about the automotive industry. I used to noodle with designing cars when I was sitting at this little desk. Any of you been in a one-room country school or gone to it? Okay, some of you know. So the little desks are so small you can hardly fit into it, and the next student is in the desk right in front of you. So I would sit down at the board drawing cars. Never did I know that eventually I'd be involved with Corvette. Corvette was an outstanding experience for me, and thanks to Joe Spielman. We go back a long way. Joe asked me to come and take over the platform, which quite frankly I was a little reluctant to do because of the experience that I'd had in the past with platform managers or program managers where they really weren't given the support to carry out their job effectively. But Joe said not to worry, you'll have everything you need, and he delivered that. Probably the most memorable time in my career at GM is the enthusiasm, the focus, the desire, the passion for a product. And everyone that was involved with Corvette when I came into the program and left the program had the same type of a feeling, same type of a personality. In fact, I just judged one of the cars a few minutes ago and talked to the owner of the car. And that same enthusiasm is here today as it was 25 years ago when I left the Corvette platform. And I applaud all of you for continuing that spirit. I remember as Joe and John and Jerry and everybody sitting up here remember those dark days at GM where there, quite frankly, wasn't planned to be a new Corvette. The board had already approved to remove the Corvette from the core business, which basically meant that it was destined for the scrapping. But obviously, some of the very courageous people continued that same kind of enthusiasm and never die spirit. And that's what the Corvette owners are to me today, and we're back 25 years ago. So I think each of you should take a standing applause for the outstanding dedication you've had to the product.
Russ's comments. To me, it's the people, not the car. As much as I love the cars, it's the people that I meet. And I have friends in Germany and friends in Australia who are Corvette people. And I go places and wear my Corvette pin, and they're talking to me in German, pointing at the pin. It's like, wow, it's pretty cool. Anyway, having been an enthusiast, I also was lucky enough to work at Chevrolet during the turmoil at the end of the C4 car and the beginning of the C5 car. And Jim Perkins came to me and said, I need somebody to help foster the fifth generation car, would you do it? And of course I said yes, and that's the beginning of the story. I was involved with the tail end of C4, Grand Sport, and all the cars there. And trust me, those cars got better and better year after year, and Russ is responsible for that. Then of course the launch of the C5, I did the product configuration, all option loads, pricing, and helped push for the third car, which was ended up being the Z06. And so that's been my time, and since then I come to the museum, go to various car shows, and try to get people excited about the car, and give them talks about how the car gets done and stuff like that. And I appreciate being up here.
Yeah, good afternoon. John Cafaro here, and I'm going to follow up on my colleagues here. You know, I've been an enthusiast for Corvettes since I was 8 years old, so I go way back. And, you know, just had the fortune of coming to GM and having the opportunity to work on Corvettes and Chevrolet, and really work with iconic designers. My mentor, your friend Jerry Palmer. Randy's not here, and really the fourth gen was really my kind of training ground. I worked with Jerry, and worked with Randy and the team, Ted Schroeder, guys like that. You know, who would have thought you would come this far? It's a great facility, museum, weathering the sinkhole disaster, working on world-class motorsports park, and then all of you are great customers. Our fan base, our customers, our clients, it's what I come to work every day, and I'm really lucky to kind of span a few decades here, and I can't believe I'm part of the Corvettes of the past. So it's hard to believe everything I could get to be just working on the car, and every day I pinch myself and can't believe I come to work with great brand. And I could go on and on. Looking forward to talking to all of you over here and sharing our experiences around Corvette.
Ron Fellows, I'm Canadian, live in Toronto. Where's my wife? She came along. We actually drove down. Hi, Linda. I'm very fortunate to get to race the racing versions of a lot of the guys that are here and their production efforts. And the secret to a really good race car is a really good production car first. And we've been really fortunate to have, I was around raced the 5th and 6th generation Corvettes. And actually the gentleman being inducted tonight, Herb Fischel, actually hired me following the Chevy 200 Trans Am race in Detroit when I won in a Ford. So Herb had been a mentor for me, hired me, and he talked about taking a Corvette to Le Mans, and I put my hand up as quick as I could to be part of that. So I retired from racing at the end of '08, full-time for Corvette racing. They still keep me around as an ambassador advisor, and I also have a performance driving school. It is thank you, dear Claudio, our CEO. It's the official performance driving school for Corvette, and get to go out there and play when I'm healthy. Bad way. And can't get enough of the Z06. Very Canadian of me. But welcome. You know, I get to spend a lot more time with Corvette owners at the racetrack and in the Corvette corrals. And I'm tired of answering performance balance questions. There's a number of sayings for BOP, and I won't get into it. But thank you for coming. Thanks for having us, and it's been terrific.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Claudio, and to echo some of the other comments from my colleagues, I am extremely honored and humbled to be here. And it is indeed my pleasure to be in the company of such fine gentlemen. Well, but it's, you know, looking back, I retired in 2008, and then I went on to another job, which I left originally. I'm back fighting crime, and I'm going like, man, I am way too old for that business. But just to take an aside, if I may, for a moment, are there any veterans in the audience, police or fire? I would say thank you for your service, and God bless you all. Really, what's going on now, it's just insane. As I said, again, forgive me for taking this diversion, but I'm fighting crime. And at least a couple of times a month, we're getting memos from the FBI or from Homeland Security about an individual or group or whatever is out to kill cops. And this assassination of police officers is just got to stop. It's just crazy. But again, my pleasure to be here and to be able to work on the Corvette. I mean, officials going to be inducted today, and I was fortunate enough to be transferred from Pontiac racing over to Chevrolet racing and worked with Mr. Perkins, of course Mr. Hendrick, and John Middlebrook was the general manager of Chevrolet at the time. And we went to John and we talked about Corvette and racing Corvette. Herb set up the deal, myself, a guy by the name of, you probably know, Doug Feehan, and Gary Pratt from Pratt Miller. The three of us came together, we put a program together to race the car and to race it internationally. And our goal, of course, was to go to Le Mans. And we did. Ronnie was one of our drivers, and we succeeded. And just to go there, because there's a political guy now talking about, you know, time for change for America, make America great again. Well, our deal was to make Corvette great again, because in Europe, at the time when we started racing, the bad guys had Corvettes. It was really an insult to drive a Corvette. You weren't part of a contingent that you wanted to be part of if you owned a Corvette. So our goal was not only to win at Le Mans, but to change the entire perception of Corvette internationally, and we did. And it was just unbelievable. And when we won the first time, and we're on the podium at Le Mans, and they're playing the national anthem of the United States, I got to tell you, there wasn't a dry eye on my eyes. It was truly unbelievable, not only for the car, for the brand, for General Motors Chevrolet division, but for all of you that had supported us and that came to the races and wrote to us and said good luck. The museum, Wendell Strode, Mr. Cooksey, all the guys at the plant. I'll tell you, one time we went to the plant with Mr. Cooksey, and we had the race car there, and guys would come up, and here's the big guys, and they're going, that's my car. I said, I helped with that car because we built the car up from the hydrofoam chassis rails that came right out of the plant. And I mean, here you see these big burly guys, you know, that look like, you know, whatever, and they were like little kids, touching them, and they just wanted to be part of it. But that's the influence that the brand, that the Corvette family, if you will, instills in everyone that you touch. So I'm just very proud to be here. Thank you again for coming, and thank you for supporting our car.
I'm Gib Hufstader, and I've been really with the car a very long time. I'm an engineer from Chevrolet and worked various groups, R&D, at one time under Maurice Ollie, and then in the transmissions I did clutches. I did the high-low clutch for Daytona, 3,100 pound, and the two-plate clutch we did for our 454 LS6, so forth. But anyways, soon after that area. Early 60s, I was demoted to Zora's group. It really was. I had the impression I was being fired from a very important person. But anyways, I enjoyed fitting in there because I had followed Zora and his team. I was a car racer, sports car racer. For many years, I had an Austin Healey and helped other Healey, Barkers and so forth. Anyways, had a very interesting activity with Zora. He had a very small group. We were all assigned quite a few parts, brakes, clutches, transmissions, axles. By assignment, it means you are responsible for getting the design out and the prototype in production if there's any changes coming along. And also at the time, Zora recognized I was interested in racing, so kind of extracurricular, I was allowed to go or told or whatever to help teams because as a racer, I knew the broken heart when parts didn't finish and they were failed because they were production parts and this and that and so forth. Anyways, so I filled in at that time to help some of the independent privateer car owners and so forth. And so I got to know the car very well. Of course, helped many teams, the Owens Corning, Dick Goldstrand, bless his soul, I was invited to go with him in Le Mans in 1957. We broke piston pin, hydrogen embrittlement of the piston pin, and so forth. Anyway, long story. Anyways, so I worked on Zora's project. He came to me with a concept for a transverse engine, mid-engine, which he did it in toothpick form. That's all. I had to figure it out from then on, which we have one of the engines here, and of course we built some cars. It was in the New York Auto Show in 1970. A very compact arrangement. Zora like short wheelbase, so we were about 10 inches shorter than the current car, but had all room for changing plugs, no problem. Anyways, I'm also grateful to be part of the Corvette and stayed with the team all the way through till my retirement. Essentially, when we split off Corvette people from in CPC time, and I went into engine group and picked up L98s and various things, but mostly just packaging. I didn't do core stuff. I didn't have a lot of fun working for Zora because we built a rotary during the Di Lorenzo time. We were all, Mr. Cole was, President Cole was anxious to prove the Lonco engine. And I must admit now I didn't have any interest in that darn thing because it's a very inefficient thermodynamic device. More the worst part of the flathead engine. Anyways, we built four rotor, and ran fine, and thank goodness it's still around, but glad it failed, but whatever. So yeah, that's just a short portion of my involvement. Later on, I got hired back by Herb as a contract after I retired. I had a lot of fun working with Corvette Challenge teams, Claudio and the new camshaft and CNC heads and other details. At the time, the engine was just into production, and we discovered weaknesses is found in racing, cam change, various details, dampers, so forth, which was very important to get taken care of at the time. And of course, we evolved it on up to a 530 horsepower legal engine in Mitch Wright's CCA program and so forth. Anyways, retired from that, and now I'm very grateful to work with the crew. Enjoy all of it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Werner Meier, and I'm probably the least likely guy to be up at this thing. I mean, I'm surrounded by people that made it happen. The guys that designed, manufactured, built, tested, raced, and built this phenomenal product. And I was one of these guys that was lucky enough to buy one of these on my 18th birthday, and I've never gotten over the disease. I soon found, I tried to make a car go fast, aspired to be a racer, and realized soon that I didn't have the aptitude for that after cracking a car up, and I decided it was a lot cheaper for me to be restoring these cars than to race them and wreck them. the insurance coverage doesn't apply when you pile one up at the track. So anyway, I worked as an engineer at GM for 30 years, retired about 13 years ago to pursue my dream. Opened a Corvette restoration facility with my son, and now I play Corvettes 7 days a week. People say, you work all the time. I say, I never work at all. I go to play every day. And it's thanks to the people around me that I can live this dream. And so I'm the most appreciative guy up here, and thanks for all the great work you guys did.
Hello, I'm Allan Barker, and I was a mechanic for my brother. He and I started racing sports cars in 1956, and we raced 3 English sports cars and ended up winning the national championship in our class in 1965. So we retired and ended up getting a 1963 Roadster. It must have been one of the heavy-duty option Roadsters that Chevrolet made, which the coupes were designated Z06. But anyway, the car was offered to us, and we started out with it, and ended up winning the national championship in B production with that particular car in '69 and '70. Then we built a '69 Roadster, 350 cubic inch B production car, which we won the national championship the next 2 years in a row. So anyway, we won our last 25 races in a row, and we finished 42 races in a row, and it was driven by this guy right next to me, my little brother, Allan Barker. Thanks to my brother and 4 other guys. We stayed together for 17 years, and after maybe 2 or 3 years of just breaking it. Is that better? Well, I'll be there. Now I got your attention. He can give you all the facts, and he can give you all the bull. But I will say, I think I'm the luckiest person up here because I never owned a Corvette. Not then and not now. But I got to drive a bunch of them. And you know, thanks to those people, like Firestone never had me buy a tire from 1961. And that's a good selling point to the owners. Mr. Cook said we were one of the best things he ever had in the business world. And he had died July the 10th. John Greenwood came along in 1969, and I got to ride his creations in long distance races at the Daytona 24-hour, Sebring and Watkins Glen. And I always felt like I was the luckiest person in the world. Not only get to drive them, but they never did break. Because our philosophy was when the race is so responsible speed, but they had to have the record at every track. And we didn't intentionally go out and break it until someone else could break it. So we never spent the sponsors' money to speak of. It was always there. Our cars were absolutely beautiful back then. You didn't want to race them, we'd show them. And thanks to that team and the good Lord, never got hurt, didn't tear up a whole lot of them. Had a wonderful time. Never made a nickel off a Corvette. Most people up there can't say that. My life has been good to me. I was here last year. I left here, and a month later I had a stroke. But my wife was in Indianapolis, and I lived for all practical purposes in southern Indiana. But a friend came by 7 minutes before the stroke happened. I had nothing. TPA saved me there. Thank you, Lord. Another lucky day. And I'm 42 days today from open heart surgery. So, had a little bit of relapse from that, and I'm doing great. God bless America. And God bless you all for loving these cars. I said, Corvettes are easy to love, and these people right here, like once they kept it alive, and all because you kept buying. And by the way, I spent my working time working for Ford Motor Company, so I feel it.
I'm Gary Morgan. I came up with the idea of the National Corvette Historical Society 42 years ago. Back in 1962, I convinced my girlfriend that we should pool our money and buy a Corvette. So in 63, we got a new fuel injected coupe, and still have it to this day, but it's been a great ride. I've met a lot of great people. A bunch of years ago, a guy sitting right here beside me, about 11 o'clock at night, the phone rang, and we talked for a little while. We want to build a museum, and I listened to that, hung the phone up, and said to my wife, "You aren't going to believe this one." And I think it was a full moon that night, but unbelievable what has transpired in 25 years or whatever. It's been, we'll say, it's great to meet you meet. It's been a great time.
Let's step back and follow. I'm Ray Battaglini. How many of you been 25-year members of the generation? How many about 26? 27? 28? Because I know Terry and Gail and her husband were probably other members that became part of that founding group. It's absolutely true. I went to Gary in Cincinnati and said, "My name is Ray Battaglini. I'm rich and famous. Would you help me build a museum?" And he kind of giggled and laughed and said, "What?" And he was in construction. It was kind of interesting trying to assimilate people to get the same vision that some of us had. I had joined a fellow named Terry McMahon and volunteered. Don't ever volunteer. And they'll end up building a museum. But really what happened was that we were to build a library. That was the sole crutch of things. And I was working for a 501c3 group, and I said, "I know how to do this. I'll help you build this library." And we stalled around, and we moved around for a number of years trying to put this thing together. And I had agreed to call a meeting together because we couldn't get our act together over the phone in Auburn, Indiana. I said, "We'll meet there at the Auburn Newsburg Museum. I know the fellow that runs the museum there. We'll go through their library and get some ideas." We went through that building, John Brookmeyer, a fellow named Keith Kibbe, Klupper, Brookmeyer, and myself were the kind of catalysts that sat down and walked through that museum and said, "We're thinking too small. The library is not going to get it. We needed to preserve the information in the car that folks have built it, raised it, had anything to do with it." And that's really the formula how we got the museum. We left that building and formed what we call the National Corvette Museum. I had gone to CPC, and that's a Chevrolet Canadian division, and said the same thing. We would like to build a museum. And it was the same story. You want to do what? And Chevrolet had tried to build it on their property. And because of some other union kinds of things, it never got together. They hooked me up with a fellow named Darrell Bowler, who was their HR person. He kind of was my mentor and introduced me to a lot of these folks that are on the dais now. Ralph Kramer was kind of my entree into Chevrolet, and got into a lot of the doors that they needed to be open. I got a hold of Larry Shinoda and said, Larry, I would like to use that logo. He says, well, I don't own it, Chevrolet owns it. So I had to go to Equity Management, who owns all of that stuff that you drive and all those shirts that you wear and so forth. And they're the licensing folks. And I made a deal with them to use the round disc that you see at the National Corvette Museum. And right now, we're one of the few people that did it free. So I want to thank those folks for allowing us to do it. I brought a couple of drawings, one that you're welcome to have. When I met with CPC, I showed them my dream of your museum, and it was in the shape of a bow tie. And at this table, and I don't remember if some of you were there, we sat down and did it, but the drawing was the bow tie, and if you flew over, you knew it was right away Chevrolet. Well, he said, are you planning to expand this museum at any time? I said, oh, absolutely. He said, what part of the bow tie are you going to grow? And all of a sudden, it was like not a good idea. So back to the drawing boards we went with designs. We hooked up with John Cafaro and Larry Shinoda in I guess it was Warren, Michigan, and did a wish list and want list. And the wishing that we had is there's an elevator in this building. Did you find it? Damn it, we didn't put it in. There's a second level to this building. Did you see that? Well, that's another one that got cut. But it was really interesting sitting down with the architects and saying, we only got 13 million. How do you want to spend it? And all of the things that we really wanted to do, we couldn't do because of dollars. But I want to thank John and certainly Larry Shinoda, because they're the ones that really gave us the design, the future thinking of this building. If you look around, there's some real clues, I guess, about what the Corvette was going to look like. Some of the shapes that you'll see on the outer skin and those kinds of things. So it's been a fun experience. I live in New Mexico, so most of these folks are East Coast people. I've had a chance to travel the country and visit with most of them, know most of them through my relationships, so it's been a fun time. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. You really created a monster here. You know that, don't you? Wow. Yeah. Jerry Palmer here, and great to be here. I can recall when I became the chief designer of Chevy 3-Stroke, which is the Corvette studio. And the responsibility that goes with that, all of us have that responsibility for you folks that buy Corvettes and General Motors products and whatever. It is a great responsibility. It's a great honor to be the kind of the keeper of the appearance of this great mark. But probably the best thing I ever did as a studio head was to get John Cafaro, Randy Mateen, and Tom Peters in the studio. Not all at one time, but I managed to spread that out over my Corvette career. And I was involved with the design of every Corvette from '74 until the Z06 Gen 6 with Dave and Tom Peters. And I thought, what a way to get out of it. What a way to leave, to be involved with cars like that. And I've had great experiences. I can't tell you the experiences we had with Bill Mitchell, Zora Duntov, books should be written. And though these are secrets, you'll never hear all the stories. But they're fantastic. And these people were absolute characters. They were swashbucklers. manufacturers. They were exciting to be around. And they made things happen. And that's why the cars are what they are. And if working with all the different groups, it's always amazing how the Corvette group, the engineering group, the manufacturing, they always had that can-do, step aside, let's get it done. It was just a great group. The whole corporation had been like that, or like it is, would be a great asset to have. We had a ball. I remember the people that we met being in the studios. Herb used to bring race people over. Vince Piggins, before Herb, would bring the folks over. Smokey Unick and you name it. Rentlow, and Jim Hall, the icons of racing Corvettes. And Randy, we put Randy off to a job shop. We did the GTP car. Of course, I was Randy's watchdog, or I kept him out of trouble, and he just kept doing the job. So we're over there, we blessed the car, got it out of there, the GTP car. Then I don't know how many years later, 10 years later, I get a call from a friend of mine. Hey, he said, Hendrick's is having an open house down in Road Atlanta. Do you want to go down? And I had just completed Skip Barber driving school, so I wouldn't embarrass myself too much. So from the clay model, from the sketches of the clay model, I'd found myself taking laps in Road America in the GTP car. I think it's number 20. And the cars in Mr. Hendrick's collection. So those are the kinds of memories that I have with the Corvette. And the day I retired, this is great. You talk about a dream job that I had for 30 years. No, it's more than that. It was 37 years. I was inspired by the show car, the LeSabre. Remember that? Motorama show car, LeSabre. Unbelievable car. And the History Channel was doing a program. Could someone go out and help them set up the car at the proving grounds? So I went out with a couple other guys, because this is my last day. I thought, I'll put a full day. So I got to the grounds, and I had the chance to drive 2 of the icon cars. Started with the LeSabre. I drove her like a truck, incidentally. But what an inspiration. So that was my last day assignment. And the cherry on the sundae was I got to drive the original Stingray race car in anger at the proving grounds. It's on, if you look up the History Channel, that was my last day. And what a career I had with working with people like this. All the people here and the people that aren't here. There's a lot of great people that aren't here that hopefully will be here someday. It's a great organization. Thanks for listening.
I'm David Hill. I started at Cadillac Engineering in 1965, became the 3rd chief engineer for the Corvette at the end of '92. And I want to thank the museum for helping us get this group assembled on the stage. If you enjoy it, please let them know that you did, and maybe we can do it often for you. It's been a real thrill to get together with this group. I've come to the museum many times in many different vehicles. This time, Karen and I flew into Nashville and got a rent-a-car, and because we want to fly back tomorrow morning and finish up the Jazz Festival in Detroit. But as it came through the Nashville airport, it's pretty much like it was in my first visit to Bowling Green, which was in very early '93. It was January or February, I can't remember which. But we came down for a quality meeting, which we did on a fairly regular basis. It was pretty exciting being the new guy in Team Corvette in that very challenging time in our history. And the reason I speak of the Nashville airport is on the way back, after driving to Nashville and waiting for the plane, this fellow comes up to me at the gate and says his name is Dan Gale, and he hands me some information. And he says, we're going to build a museum for the Corvette. And I thought to myself, I don't know if there's going to be a Corvette, and this guy's going to make a museum. I better try and figure out a way that we can make it not for our demise. But it was the strangest thing. And thank God there was a Dan Gale, because he was a maniac on a mission, and that's what it took at that time and under those conditions to create the National Corvette Museum, the only museum of its kind. And I was not successful in getting Karen Gale to come up on this stage, but maybe you'll give her a round of applause for the work that she did in supporting Dan on that. And then being here last night, this room was filled with lifetime members. And I'm telling you, it was filled. It was wall to wall, all the way out to those windows, with dining tables filled with lifetime members. So that's how far it's come since 1993. And I like to think that the reason that we have been able to make the world's best sports car is because we are closer to understanding our customers than any other maker in the world. And it's at places like the National Corvette Museum that interchange of knowledge and passion takes place that enables us to do that job. So I want to thank you for all that you've taught us about how to exceed your expectations and all the friendships I've made among the Corvette community. Today we have not a maniac, but another individual on a mission that's Dan Gale's successor, a few times removed. And Wendell Strode has done just an amazing job here. So I hope that you will thank the volunteers and the staff for the visit you've had here, but also thank Wendell for doing the seeming impossible of expanding this museum, expanding this group of Corvette fanatics around the world, and we really have a lot to be thankful for. But thank you very much for all you've done to help us make the world's best sports car.
Well, I'm Joe Spielman, and I came from a little farming town in southern Minnesota. I had a Ford store and a Chevy store. And I was 11 years old, and one of the rich farmer's sons, who was coming out of the military as a bird colonel, had ordered a Corvette. It came in to that Chevy store. I was down there every day. My fingerprints were on every square inch of that car, and every square inch of the windows of that dealership. And finally, Frank Riggenhagen, who owned the dealership, said, Spielman, what the heck's going to take to keep you out of this dealership? I said, I don't know. He says, if I get you a ride in that car, will you promise to stay away for at least 2 weeks? I said, yes, but I lied, okay? And after that ride in that car, I said, if Joe, if someday you can have a Corvette, life will definitely be good. Went to GMI, came out with 2 engineering degrees, worked my way up through an assembly plant, various jobs, body shop, trim shop, paint shop, ended up plant manager. In my second plant manager's job and in the second plant, Detroit, in their infinite wisdom, decided to take Attila the Hun here and bring me to Detroit and gave me the rear drive automotive division. And unfortunately, it was great in a way, but unfortunately the corporation was in deep financial trouble at the time. And one of the first challenges I faced was my Corvette platform, engineering and plant, that the corporation was getting ready to can Corvette into the dustpan of automotive history. And by that time I'd had a Corvette every year when I was on salary all the way up to the plant manager's job. And I made up my mind, I said, Joe, you got to be true to who you shave in the morning when you look in the mirror. I can't let Corvette die. No way can I let Corvette die. But the C4 was losing money on every vehicle at that time, and I had to come up and do something different. The first thing I had to do is I had to put together a team. Dave McClellan was retiring, and I said, you know, I've got to get myself an engineer, top shelf engineer that'll sweat every little detail on that car. A new car. We got to have a new car. That was Dave Hill. I put Dave Hill in the program. Then I said, you know what? There was no money. And engineers, even good engineers, can shovel money out the window with bushel baskets as they're trying different things. So I brought Russ McLean, who I knew from Ramos Arizpe in Mexico, brought him in there. And Russ is the stereotypical Scotsman. He can squeeze $4 out of a nickel. And he's absolutely driven by process. Every issue on a new car, or the old car, even on keeping the C4 alive, he would have on a whiteboard process in Detroit, here at the plant, and have somebody assign responsibility, the time when it was going to be fixed, and by gosh, they better not miss. The next part of that three-legged stool I had to fix was I had to have somebody here in Bowling Green that could work the relationship between the folks on the floor, the union, and become a leader. And I brought this big guy to my left down here. Well, history kind of worked. Thanks to guys like Jimmy Perkins, when I didn't have any money, because I siphoned off every dime I could get out of the rest of my car programs. Today I'd probably be in jail for violating some, Security and Exchange Commission thing. Jimmy Perkins went into his advertising budget and came up with the money to build the first mule car. And from there, we went to finally got to the time we got this, the C5 approved. And rather than just take it to the top of the GM building, I brought the North American Strategy Board into the design studio. You were there, Jim. So I wanted them to be there and feel the excitement of that car. And we went through all the numbers, performance, profitability, you name it. And it was all very positive on the screen. And up on the stage, I had that red fiberglass. You remember, John Cafaro? And at the last minute, it was going around, I pulled the cover off. It was absolute silence in the room. I thought, well, Spielman, you were looking for a good job when you came here. Get your resume out. And then it was old. Let's see, who was it? Bill Hoagland stood up. I think it was the first one, and started. One by one, they all stood up and started clapping. And finally, Jack Smith stood up. Program approved. But I'll tell you, it's the fine people you have around you, the people that you would trust into doing the job, and the folks like you that buy the car, that makes Corvette the greatest car in America. Excitement over last year, 1 year ago at the Lifetime dinner banquet, some of you may have been there, I got down on my knees after I made my speech and I proposed to my beautiful wife. Is she in the audience? Where is she? Stand up. Stand up, Maggie. Come on, baby. There she is. Yeah. Isn't she beautiful? The Lord gave me a gift and gave her a project. Thank you all.
Yeah, my name is Wil Cooksey, and I came to Corvette through a circuitous route, you might say. Is that because when GM was on campus at the University of Toledo, I was graduating with a master's degree in IE. I already had a bachelor's degree in EE, and I got a master's in IE. And so they got interested in why I hadn't applied for any jobs. Well, I had a great job. I wasn't looking for a job. But when they started telling me about, well, you know, if you come to General Motors, we have some great opportunities that you can take advantage of. Told me about the car discount program and all. And of course, at that time, I perked up right there, see? Because I said, I got a 69 Corvette, and I love that car. But if I came to work, could you guys help me in that area? They said, oh, absolutely. I said, I'd love to work at Corvette. See, this was back in 1972. And they said, well, we need you right now up at General Motors Institute, but you can be assured that we will, we'll come to you one day, and we'll give you an opportunity to go work where Corvettes are being built. And so they were true in what they said. I came up and did the very best I could. I was teaching quality engineering, reliability engineering, probability research, subjects like that. And I used to visit the plants all the time. And I'd go out and visit the Corvette plant when I was at GMI. And at that time, it was over there behind the old coal pile. Some of you have been to St. Louis during those days there. I think some of you about as old as I am anyway, I should look close. But anyway, back there behind the coal pile, that's where they had Corvette. And they were working very hard to try to satisfy customers, but boy, we've come a long way since those cars that I saw back there and the cars coming off the line today. But as I looked at them, I just knew that, boy, there's more potential here in General Motors as far as building quality and reliability than I see here at St. Louis. And so I had the opportunity to not only teach the students the kind of things that we're talking about in quality and reliability, but also they finally gave me an opportunity to put my best foot forward and, see if you can do more than just teach. Of course, you had some folks standing back saying, yeah, we'll see how successful he'll be. He's standing up there at that doggone blackboard up there talking all that stuff. So we'll wait till they get out there with the UAW and GM guy. Let's see how he makes that work for him. Always give me excuses, right, as to why they couldn't do the kind of things that, I'd learned at the other company that I knew that worked. But you have to be patient to a certain extent when you're solving problems. You can't just go up and say, oh, well, we'll solve this problem in a couple of minutes, spend $60,000, and you won't even have that anymore. What happened is often they were not solving the real problem. They would make it a little bit better, but they were spending General Motors money in a lot of cases. So, I was pushing in that area. But I finally got the opportunity to lead General Motors Institute, and I asked them if I could go, like they had said. I said, can I go to St. Louis? They said, yeah, you can go to St. Louis, but we don't think that's a good choice. They said, that's one of our toughest plants. And, you came from the food industry, so we just kind of forewarn you. We don't know if you will make it or not. You might want to stay up here and wait for a better opportunity. I said, no. I said, I want to go to St. Louis where those beautiful Corvettes are built. And I said, I'll take my chances. I said, if it's too tough for me, you'll see me back here knocking on the door real fast. Hey, let me back in. I said, let me stay in here until I can do something else. Well, that didn't happen. The rest of it, I went in, yeah, I did see some tough stuff going on there. As a matter of fact, some of you probably, if you read the book that my lovely wife wrote, and I starred in it, I guess you might say, right? No Time to Cry. But at any rate, that's exactly what happened. We kind of explained how it was. We had dreams, just like you guys, all of you got dreams. You got young people got dreams all the time. You got to keep encouraging, keep dreaming, and keep working toward the dream, because it can't happen if you really want it to happen. And I just happen to be very determined that Corvette quality can be much better than it was at that time. I still love my car, and like everybody said up here, we appreciate all of your dedication to the product, because you stuck with Corvette when you had the squeaks and the rattles and you had the water leaks. A lot of you, and you had the out of balance problem, and you had some missing screws, right? And then you had some noise going on. You wonder, where the hell is that noise coming from in this car, right? And then you go to the dealer, and then a dealer will go to taking stuff apart and find out somebody put a little note in there for you. You found me, huh? But we come a long ways with developing attitudes in the workforce. You got to have people that want to make it happen, just like, let's say, I want it to happen. You got to be encouraging. Say, hey, you want these customers to be just as positive about buying this car as you are getting a check when you get ready to go home and provide for your family. And so you work hard at developing that relationship in the workforce, and that's what, I do, and that's what, I was able to accomplish. I didn't know when Joe gave me this job that he was on the verge of moving it. I didn't really realize that it was under that kind of pressure, but I just knew that this workforce can do a heck of a lot better than what they were doing. You know, you can walk into the plant and you see where somebody can read the paper, and then they can go take a break and the line's still running, and then they come back and pick up right where they left off. You know, something's missing, right? And you know good and well that when you have people working next to each other, and I got you over here working hard all the time, and you work half the time, see? And maybe you working a third of the time. What does that do for the attitude of the people? You got to level the jobs out, right? When the jobs are leveled and everybody's involved, you can have a much better workforce. They do a much better job. And that philosophy works in a lot. It works. Race team, you know, perfect. You watch a race team out there, on the Hendrick's team, perfect portrait in motion. You notice how they move in and out. Everybody got a job to do, and they get back, job well done, and they all feel good about what they're doing. And that's what you got to have when you're building Corvettes. And you reflect a very positive attitude with what goes on over across the way. And so all of these guys up here, I've had the great fortune of working with most of the people up here on this stage here, and I'm just glad that I can look back and say that I knew them, I know them, and then some of the people who are not here, I also can say the same thing for them, is that everybody had a common focus, what they wanted to make happen. And right today, it continues on, as I've heard, where you come into, as Dave said, you come into the operation, you come into Nashville, you come here, and you can see change. You can see how things are getting better. And you go for a plant visit, and you can see where that culture is still in place. People still like to see you show up. I can remember a time when people didn't care for you to be showing up. As a matter of fact, they'd look at you and wonder what you was looking at. Right? And then don't grab no camera out, because you never know, they might be in the witness protection program. Right? Just kidding. Anyway, thank you.
We've had two people, gentlemen, join us, and we'll move on to Mr. Hendrick, I guess. Two.
Thank you very much. My name's Jim Perkins, and I had the great fortune, as these gentlemen, some of them have said, to work with a lot of the guys on the stage, and a lot of people who aren't represented that are just phenomenal people that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And of course, you can only have so many at a time, but I graduated Waco High School, Waco, Texas, 1953. Waco's famous for a lot of things. We had a tornado. We were going to do a zoo and our duck died. And just most recently we had a motorcycle gang that got shot up down there. But other than that, it was a very peaceful place to work. And I grew up as really in pretty tough circumstances, great parents, but you know, we were products of the Depression, and you just had to do what you had to do. I started rebuilding cars, if you will. I built my first car when I was 14 years old, and I built 3 or 4 that had to be pushed before they could be driven. And never had any idea about anything, you know, like a sporty car. And I remember 1953 when the Corvette came out. Waco Chevrolet was a very large Chevy store in Central Texas, and the dealer's name was Bubba Nash, believe it or not. That was his name, Bubba Nash. Mr. Nash, for one reason or the other, because we had a large Air Force base there and several training bases, received a Corvette. I don't know how, you know, you wouldn't think it'd be allocated to some dealership in Waco, Texas, but I remember going down, and we had this massive tornado in May of '53. So as a result, we didn't have a graduation ceremony, we didn't have a prom or anything else because a number of our classmates were killed. I was downtown in it, my mother was in a store that blew away, and my dad and I were in a store that pretty well blew away. But you know, all that's significant. But then the thing I remember is looking at that Corvette and basically going to the dealership and looking at it and really trying to figure out what the heck it was. You know, and it wasn't derogatory toward the car, but the old dealer was Mr. Nash, and he said, I don't know what kind of tomfool would pay $2,900 for that car. And I've thought about that a lot, because the last time I saw the car, it was they had an elevator in that old building, and it was upstairs, tucked away. And somebody probably somewhere today still has that 1 of 300 that, you know, is a pretty phenomenal find. But I was graduated high school and went to Baylor University and got drafted out of Baylor. Well, not drafted, we got activated in a reserve unit. And I had worked since I was 13, 14 years old, basically garages and one thing and the other. And when I got out of the Navy, I was going to go back to school, but I was in Dallas, Texas, mustering out, and decided I'd try to stay. And really wanted to work for Chevrolet. I don't know why Chevrolet then, but I'd gotten to know Chevrolets very well. And through a lot of various, you know, efforts, there was a Chevrolet zone office in Dallas, Texas. And I had landed a job with Firestone Tire and Rubber Company just down the street, 1900, on Harry Hines Boulevard. But just 3 miles up the road was a Chevrolet zone office and warehouse. And, you know, you're kind of like everybody else in that era, you know, you're young and not deterred by much of anything. And I couldn't even get an interview. I'd clean up at the warehouse at noon and head out for the Chevrolet zone office. And it took me about 60 to 90 days, somewhere along there, to get anybody that would hand you an application and let you fill it out, because at that era, Chevrolet was on top of the world. We probably had 35% of the market in South Central Texas and throughout Texas, and it was very selective. And so finally I did, though. I landed an interview and I had an opportunity to go to work as a third level L&MR inspector, which was the lowest level job in the company, reporting to a janitor. And that was October 3rd, coming up on October 3rd, 1960. And you couldn't have convinced me under any circumstance that things would ever turn out the way they turned out, and especially by that time, of course, Corvette had made a name for itself with Zora coming along, and I give him, you know, from 55 forward. Corvette had really become something special, and of course, it was way beyond anything I could afford anyhow. But I managed to progress beyond there and did pretty well in Chevrolet, and I left for 5.5 years, did the Lexus project at Toyota, and I never left to come back, but I got a call and they asked me if I'd be interested in coming back, and I said I'd be interested in coming back for one of two jobs. Either I'd like to run Chevrolet Motor Division, or I'd be president of GM. Well, you can imagine. Whoa, well, and where did you start, son? You were L&MR inspector? But I progressed a little bit beyond that. Well, long story short, they called me back in about another 3 months and offered me the Chevrolet job if I went back to GM. I don't think I could have thought when I went back. I was away for several years because I'd worked for Mr. Estes in the corporation, and as I said, going away, and I worked at Buick for a while. I got transferred to Buick, and I don't think in my foggiest thoughts that I'd ever believe I'd come back to Chevrolet and see what I saw. Because Chevrolet was always a very prideful, strong organization, and it wasn't false pride. If you could back it up, you could brag about it, and we could always back it up. I mean, we had a team at Chevrolet in the early days that just was incredible, and we lost a lot of that. And I, you know, when I got back, I was pretty surprised by the shape we were in. And I came back, and I'm not trying to. I came back. I was senior vice president of Lexus. I had a pretty good stroke, and we did the first scratch on the first piece of paper with Lexus. My team and I did. And when I came back, I should have done a little bit more due diligence on the project, because I think I got the Lumina APB van as one of my new offerings, lovingly nicknamed the Dustbuster. And then there was another Priest, as I remember, that was had been described as a parade float in some of the So anyhow, having said all that, though, the beauty part of it was, even though we were in very difficult shape, is I had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest people I've ever worked with in my life. And some of them are represented on the stage, a lot more aren't. And Joe Spielman, I'm going to cut this kind of short because we can talk forever. But I think the first big assignment I got when I got back to Chevrolet is to reduce headcount by 25% across the company. Couldn't fire anybody. You couldn't lay them off. You just had to place them out, or they had to be a voluntary situation. We started reducing headcount when we closed regions, we closed zones. And it just very demoralizing kind of thing for people, and especially the guy that just came back. But in the midst of all that, well, of course, the C4 program was winding down. I think Joe mentioned, and we were losing money on every one of the cars. Thank God for Russ McLean, because he came along into that program and kind of got it back in black. But we were trying to, the work was going on the C5, and of course it was, wasn't approved. It wasn't an approved program as such. But Joe Spielman walked into my office one day, and I had a mountain of stuff that was just weighing me down. And he struggled with dealers were upset for a good reason, and cutting the head count, trying to make payroll if you want to know the truth. And Spielman walked in my office, and I said, "Well, Joe, how you doing?" He said, "All right." I said, "Did he talk to you?" And I said, "What about?" He said, "Have you heard about Corvette being killed?" And I said, "Hi, Joe, how you doing?" And I think what he was about to do is make it my problem. That's what he was doing. But we got into the thing, and honest to God, at that point, I hadn't heard. It was kind of throughout the organization, but it was unofficial. And everybody had been told to cease and desist, don't work on it anymore. There's no money, no engineering resource. Just back off. And one thing led to another, and it stunned me because I thought most iconic vehicle we have in the organization, greatest name recognition we have in the organization, and we're going to kill it. And of course, it was the same thing. There's no money, there's no engineering resource, and it just went on and on and on and on and on. All the reason not to do something, rather than do something. Well, the difference is they just didn't know, the people who were making the decision didn't realize the will and strength of the people who were working on the car. They weren't going to let it die. But I remember, and I won't call his name, but I told Spielman, I said, "Well, let me get into it." And I said, "What do you need?" He said, "We need about $1 million, I think was the first number." And it turned out I was accused of misplacing $1 million, but it was actually $2.5 million. So I didn't steal, I just distributed it differently. But anyhow, long story short, and I know this is right and on, I went to see our gentleman who was basically our president at the time, in charge of North American operations. We had a face-to-face, and I wasn't going to back down if I could possibly help it. And he was one of the guys that brought me back to Chevrolet, or asked me to come back. So I said, "It's going to be embarrassing for him to fire me, because he just brought me back." So as it turns out, well, the car was Lazarus dead. I mean, the C5 was Lazarus dead. It was going nowhere. And he looked me in the steely blue eyes and just told me, he said, "You're putting your career at risk to even talk about this." He said, "It's done." So anyhow, that didn't stop us. We kept moving forward and started finding ways to fund it. Went out to TDM and built a serve car, and it turned out to be one of the greatest surprises I think anybody ever saw. I remember being out at Mesa with a car, the Mule car, C4 body rig on the high-perform rails in your car, and the old rumble strips. Some of you remember that were out at one time or the other. You run across the rumble strips with the old car before the C5, and you set up a memory shake that'll rattle your teeth like you wouldn't believe for about 5 minutes after you went through it. And this car went through it just like you were in a go-kart. It's unbelievable what our guys have done. So the rest of the story is just like Joe told it. We progressed from there and went forward. And one of the funny side notes about it, Joe's show that he talked about I think we showed 3 different versions. We showed the engineering show, or the show we did at the Styling Dome. You had 3 different versions, and we settled on the wishbone, the backbone and pods. Well, I thought it'd be nice to invite Zora, and so I said, well, kind of get everybody out of the mainstream. I'll get Zora out here and have him look at it just as an honor to him, and he'll have some thoughts about it. Well, Zora came in, and he, I forget who all was there that day, but Zora walked around it. He looked all over everything. kept, you know, perusing things, and he had this odd look on his face. And, you know, he's always kind of stoic anyhow, unless you got interested in talking to me. And so he said, Jim, where is mid-engine? And I said, Zora, you know, there's no mid-engine. He said, Jim, you must have mid-engine. I said, Zora, just, man, I'm telling you, I said, we're lucky to have what we got. I said, it's like I told Herb one time, I said, if it cost 15 cents to go to Hamtramck, we couldn't get out of the building. You know, that's how shape we were in. But the reality of all that is he you know, he kind of huffed and puffed a little bit, and this is absolute true story. About a week later, my secretary, Mimi, a lot of people remember, Mimi said, Miss Perkins said, Mr. Duntop would like to come see you. And I said, okay, fine. I said, what does he want to talk about? I said, he just wants to come see you. I said, well, find a spot for him. She said, well, how long? And I said, well, with Zora, you just let him have all the time he wants, but let's try to keep it to an hour, no more than an hour. Well, he walked in my office on that given day, and he's in his suit, dressed up nicely, had a rolled up set of plans under his arm. And he walked in, he said, Jim, I want to talk to you about meeting Jim. I said, man, I don't know what it's going to take, Zora. I said, you know, and all respect to you, and as much as I think of you, it can't happen, it's not going to happen. Jim, you're making huge mistakes, Jim. You will always be remembered for your mistake. I said, it's my mistake? And so one thing led to another, and I won't bore you with all the details, but we went back and forth for probably 30 minutes. And he finally looked at me and stood up and he said, you're not going to consider Medici? I said, Zora, it's not for me to consider. I said, we got a program, and we know where we are, we know what we got to spend, we know what engineering resource we have. He said, all right. He said, I raise money, I'd be the son of a bitch myself. You know, it's just the opportunity to be able to do what I was given the opportunity to do. You know, you talk about the great and wonderful surprises in life and realize what a great country this is. We had a kind of a dumb looking old priest. I went to Cafaro's boss, and I don't think Cafaro still holds it against me, I'm not sure, but you see the new imbalance, and you realize where it came from. This guy moved over and took over the change out of the priest into imbalance, and took an old car with air tread and everything else and made it something special. That's what I'm talking about. And did it with a team member that I just knew I needed him, and we got him. You look at this new car today, and you know this DNA is all over the new car. But I retired from GM in 1996, and a little early. And this gentleman to my right, Mr. Hendrick, and I got together. Thankfully for me, one of the greatest decisions for me ever. I don't know about him, whether he thought it was a good decision or not, but for me it was a great decision. And we've spent a number of years together now, and it's been a wonderful experience for me as a continuation of a career that's lasted a long time. I think I mentioned I was graduated high school in 1953. You don't have to be a math major to figure out I'm a pretty old guy. But in the midst of all that, as I got further down my career with Mr. Hendrick, he had the vision to do this Hendrick Heritage Center. And he has a passion for Corvettes, which he'll tell you about, that is second to none. And he's amassed a collection that's second to none. And I have the great opportunity to be part of that. And as someone said, well, today I don't own a Corvette, but I feel like I own about 180 of them. And it is sure sweet, let me tell you. Thank you very much. God bless you.
I didn't do any better waiting to go behind him, but I think I'm in big trouble. I'm probably the most boring guy on the stage. I'm in awe of these people here and what they've accomplished in their automotive history. And I know a lot of them are friends of mine. Ron's driven for me, and John and I worked together on the SS, and Gary, I begged for money. Jim, I begged for money. But I came from the other side of the street, but I do have that passion for the car. And I grew up on a farm in Virginia. My dad was a tobacco farmer, and I didn't know what I wanted to do in life, but I knew it wasn't that. And thanks to GM, I took automotive mechanics in high school. And Jim, I built the principal's Corvair, rebuilt his engine, and forgot to put oil in it. And that was, but I also built a 31 Chevrolet with my dad when I was 14, and I ran in C gas before I had a driver's license. And that car had a Rochester fuel injection unit on it that I swapped to Buddy because he couldn't figure out how to make it crank, and I gave him a full barrel for it. So that was a piece of a Corvette back in the day. But I ended up going to, I was in a co-op deal with Westinghouse, and I was in engineering, and I started selling Corvettes, working on them in a gas station. And when the 70 strike happened, I was making fiberglass parts with a friend of mine that worked for Carolina Power and Light on these buckets. And so I bought my first Corvette for $1,000, and I had to sell it to get my first dealership. I was recruited by Chevrolet, and I went to a little town in Bennettsville, South Carolina, and they said, if you can fix this deal, we'll give you a bigger opportunity. And that deal was selling 200 cars a year, had no showroom. And, you know, I sold 1,000 cars my first year because I had to. And you know, they did exactly what they told me they were going to do. They gave me a bigger opportunity with Chevrolet. And I've raced all of my life. So we started, I boat raced, I drag raced, and held world records in boating and championships, but NASCAR was a passion. I never thought I'd get to race in NASCAR. I almost had to fold up the first year, and now we've won 263 events and 15 championships. And I need you to go with me to Darlington to talk to my drivers, because I think if you walked up to the window and got in their face, I think they'd do a little bit better this weekend, you know. But the Lord has blessed me. I have the two things in life I love other than my family are cars and racing. And I've been a Chevrolet guy. I've never raced anything but a Chevrolet. I owe Corvette that love and passion for that car. I used to go to the Chevrolet dealership in the little town I'm from, and I couldn't figure out how one man could own 30 Chevrolets. And then I realized what floor plan was. And now I'm very good at that. And but I remember when we used to tape up the windows and you'd wait for the new car. And I remember the first Corvette that I saw, I couldn't sleep at night. And I still get that way. I came to the plant here in 1989 to get the first ZR1. And still have it today. And had the GTP car out here on the grass with it. I had the Owens Corning guys with me down at Sebring. And every time I get around these guys, and so many, Jerry's been to our place, so many of you guys have helped me in so many different ways. You know, I can't believe today that we sell more GM cars than anybody in the country retail. And I thank God for the opportunity, but more than that, the friends that I've met along the way. And to be even mentioned in the same breath with these guys that have done so much, and for the customers and the fans and the loyal Corvette enthusiasts, it's a dream come true for me, because that first car that I had to sell to get my first dealership, we've been working on it for 5 years, and it's got an LS9. It's out here covered up, and I haven't seen it in a year and a half, so I wanted to unveil it today and see it with my guys. But tonight we'll have a lot of the dealers that are my friends and partners that are coming, and I just want to thank you guys for what you've done, because you saved the car, you designed the car, you made the car what it is, and from folks like myself and these people, we can never repay you enough for standing tall and standing strong and making sure that the dream didn't die. So thank you guys.
We are going to take a few questions here, but let's just recognize what we have here. This is an historic moment. We really need to recognize these gentlemen for what they've done for this museum and for the mark. Let's stand and give them an outstanding, what they've truly deserved, a round of applause. I know we could keep going on forever here because this is fascinating to me, but we'll take a few minutes for questions. I know we have an autograph session coming up, so let's kind of make it as quick as we can and get through it and go on to the autograph session because I know they have other commitments. If you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll give you the mic. Hold on.
Of all of the wisdom up on the stage, gentlemen, who have we forgotten? Who would you recommend for next year's inclusion in the Hall of Fame?
I'd recommend Ed O'Keefe. Ed O'Keefe ran the Corvette Action Center in the plant and worked with Joe and Dave McKellen and everything, and that's when the C4 started changing and progressed all the way up into the C5. But his dad had pictures from '53, set up Detroit, and then he was involved with it in St. Louis. And Ed's known Corvettes his whole life, and he's very dedicated, but he died last year. But I'm telling you, that guy, if anybody would promoted the car, he did.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to recommend Benoit Froger. Benny, as we used to call him, was integral in the part of helping General Motors in France. Benny was the marketing manager at Le Mans. And Herb recruited him probably in '97, '98 to help us, to facilitate our trip to France, help us through the French minefield, get the car approved with the ACO, which is the sanctioning body of Le Mans, so it would be very similar to NASCAR. And without Benny's help, it would have taken us probably an extra 4, 5, 6 years to get to where we needed to be, to make the car competitive, understand the rules, understand the tradition behind Le Mans, and understand the French culture. And really, and I think Ron would agree, Benny just was a tremendous help to us. So I would say Benoit Froger, and it would, I think, help also build a bond with the ACO and get some of the French folks over here to understand what Corvette really is all about and to continue to build that relationship. So I would say Benoit Froger. And Benny passed away 2 years ago. And we just would love Corvettes, and he raced himself. He's just a great guy. Thank you.
I would suggest we consider Harry Turner. Those of up here, none of us know Harry Turner. He was very instrumental in the transition of C4 to C5, and in fact was my boss for a number of years. So that would be one of my recommendations.
Somebody I worked with was Ralph Kramer, and he used to lie about what Jim Perkins was doing and up to, but he's kind of the folks that really got us through, as a museum anyway, into the doors that we needed to get to the people that we needed to talk to, and really ran, I don't want to say through the doors for us, but he got us into where we needed to be to make it work. Chevrolet, I remember when I talked to Jim, and I mentioned to him last night that he says, Ray, when I talked to him about being a museum, he says, if we don't start selling Chevrolets, we're going to be a museum. So it was one of those kind of stories that Ralph says, not to worry, we'll get it taken care of. It'd be slow and paced, but I mean, he really loves the car. I guess he's racing, or his son's racing currently, so he's another fellow that we ought to look at bringing in.
I just got, I would second that with Ralph for sure. I think a lot of us up here know Ralph, a number of years as a scholar and really a keeper of, the history of everything Corvette. But, I really like to recognize the Pratt and Miller team and the Pratt and Miller leadership. And Gary Pratt is a guy that I think Jerry and Randy, we all go back with because they interface with design. And, one of the things about race cars, they got to go fast, but they got to look good and be built good and have great graphics on them. And Gary always recognized that, and building the aero into the production cars, and so the car can be easily homologated into a race car. And I think about Gary Pratt in a little shop with Bob Riley in there, and pushing clay, and what it's the mega team it's become now, and the winning record. And then Gary's is still the same guy. He's hands-on. I was just looking at the C7Rs out here. I mean, they're a work of art. They're as good as anything that Ferrari can roll out of Maranello, with the details, the clasps, the shut faces, and the structure and the cockpit. So Gary and his guys at Protofab, with Doug and everybody, it's amazing what they do. So I think it's time to start recognizing the road racing team here at the Hall.
I'm only going to second Ralph Kramer. Some of us in engineering recognize that he is continually, from my first experience meeting him, very supportive of Corvette, always wants to get the best face out. He has tremendous amount of media content, individuals that he can work with, and I think he's been dedicated all along, so I think he certainly should be up for nomination into Corvette Hall of Fame.
Just to give it a little bit of an international flavor, there's a gentleman named Rolf Gallasch who lives in Wiesbaden, Germany, and he operates the world's largest Corvette shop on water. Because he inherited a marina from his father, he became very popular among the GIs that were importing Corvettes into Germany. And when they'd wreck them, because of his familiarity with fiberglass, he was the designated repair facility. And he really got the bug, and he managed to come up with all kinds of documentation from the Frankfurt auto shows. He's got a library and a collection of cars over there that just sends chills down our spines. And we don't know about it over here. But, we got a great ambassador over there who's done an awful lot for the marque. And as enthusiasts go, he rates as high as most anybody I've ever met.
Okay, let me just mention one thing. I think those are all tremendous prospects. I would anyone there, just contact any of the board here at the museum or Wendell with that information. We can kind of get the ball flowing from there. I guess I've been given the book sign, so it's, if you don't mind, can we adjourn to the autograph tables? And I want to thank each. Oh, hold on. We have one over.
I think there's been a lot said about Ralph Kramer. Certainly Ralph and I worked directly together. He was my PR guy, my Chevrolet, one of the three that I had while I was there. And, I remember we did the business case for the C5, and we weren't really struggling, but Ralph came up with an idea that, we ought to take a look at how many magazine covers Corvette had since its inception that we could account for, going all the way back. I asked you, if you guessed today how many, that was as in 95, late part of 95, I guess 92, 93, maybe it's more. And so we took count and we had a little quiz on it, but we turned up that, and a lot of it was during Ralph's tenure. We had over 800 magazine covers for Corvette since its inception in 1953. Nobody's even come close to that. We used that in our business case, if you remember, Joe. And it knocked everybody's socks off. Some people, the top management of GM thought, well, maybe you had 40 or 50. But when you talk about 800, hello. So, but Ralph was very innovative, very thoughtful, and he had a network of people like no one I've ever known.
Thank you. Tremendous. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Go to the autograph table. Give it a moment. Everyone has their name at the table, so